Hey y'all, good evening. We're back. So we were just talking, which we often do, and we wanted to follow up on our original video. And today or this evening rather, we want to discuss standards, why they're important, how we developed our individual standards, and how we believe others would benefit from having standards as well. So what do you think?
I mean, I would say standards are definitely important in terms of dating and vetting someone, having an idea of what you see for yourself, having a vision, having clarity on where you're headed in life, and making sure that someone aligns and not spending too much time dealing with someone who doesn't align or who doesn't match that vision. That said, I will say, kind of out the gate when we met, I didn't necessarily have established standards. I was young, or we were both young rather, but I didn't have set standards. I guess I kind of knew what I didn't want or what I wasn't going for when I saw it, but prior to, I hadn't actually sat down in detail or on a pad and really thought about, like, okay, what am I really looking for in a woman, in a partner. And I, by luck chance, I feel like kind of came across Kayla, and she checked a lot of boxes for me. And I think she also kind of helped me create some of that standard for myself as well, by seeing some of the things that she was doing and some of the ways she was carrying herself. And I think that kind of set the bar a little bit in my interactions with women, kind of at that point. Granted, I haven't gone anywhere since then, but she did kind of set that bar for me and kind of let me know, like, okay, these are some of the things I expect, or even forward thinking about motherhood, like what type of woman I wanted to start a family with, and what type of woman, what characteristics do I want in a wife, and different things like that. So I mean, that's my personal perspective. But again, I think now in this latter age, and kind of seeing the struggles of dating, the dating scene currently, I would definitely say having and knowing your standards for yourself as an individual, and as well as for your partner and what you're looking for, is very important. Just aspect for having a long-lasting relationship. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I want to take a step back. So you already said in the previous video that your parents were married. You grew up in a two-parent household. So how do you believe that kind of environment shaped your standards, whether you were aware of it or not? Like, where do you think, or what role do you believe your upbringing played in the standards that you held, whether you were conscious of it or not?
I would say by default, like, I had no clue what it actually looked like and meant to be married, because again, I didn't feel like I really got that real talk from my parents. I would say the only thing it really set in stone for me was just kind of like by default, oh, I'm gonna get married one day. Like, just, I don't know how, when, what to expect, who I'm supposed to be, and how I'm supposed to show up in that space or during that season, but yeah, it's gonna happen. And I guess just like with a big bit of optimism, that it was gonna kind of just come with the territory. Like, I'm gonna get older, I'll get married at some point, but I can't say prior to that I was looking forward to it, I was anticipating it, I was, like I said, just really mindful of what that really took. And I didn't really get that conversation or that dialogue from my parents. So I would say they did set that tone, or at least instill in me that I was gonna want to be married and have my own family and have a household, have all my kids in one roof, under one roof, and see them each day and different things like that. So I mean, that became a huge part for me. And even in the midst of our relationship, I think kind of having that true loyalty, in a sense. I haven't been perfect in our relationship. I've had my fair share of mistakes and different things like that, but just knowing, like, for me, I was kind of in it. Like, once I decided that I was gonna rock with you, to me, I was just like, all right, I need to find somebody that is gonna rock with me back, and we're gonna just kind of figure it out. But I mean, that was the biggest thing, I think, for me. It wasn't so much the little details of marriage and different things like that, it was just kind of like that's something you do. It wasn't rooted in religion. You know, I didn't grow up super religious or anything like that, so it was just like, I don't know, it's just kind of something you do. You get older, you're gonna get married, you're gonna have a family. My dad, he came from he had previous marriage, and then met my mom, and then had me. I was the last of his kids, and I heard tidbits. You know, I was coming up as a kid, as a young kid, so I would hear tidbits of kind of what he was experiencing with his ex-wife and with the whole co-parenting scene with her, and it sounded ugly. It sounded like, yeah, I don't want to do that. And I think just also having that example in my own household, like I said, just kind of cemented that for me. But, you know, that's me. I don't know. How do you feel? I know your upbringing is quite different than mine, and I definitely could see there was a focus for you initially on someone taking you seriously and wanting to take that next step with you. So, I mean, how do you feel like that was for you?
My upbringing, or
the upbringing, and how that impacted your standards or your thoughts for relationship.
So for me, my parents weren't together, and I guess like when I would see the way they interacted, I was like, I never want this for myself. And I felt like a lot of the, I guess, insecurities and issues I had was because I didn't have that foundation. And I always say, it probably sounds weird, but like, I was a little girl. Like, I want to get married, I want to have a family, I want to do it this way, I want to do it the right way. Because I guess to a certain extent, I felt like if I could have a family of my own, it would reconcile the experiences I had, like with the co-parenting relationship my parents had. So for me, I was always very intentional about like, I want to get married, and I was probably really like intimidating and mean and standoffish because I'm like, I had very like strict standards. Like, if you want to be my boyfriend, you have to do this. Like, you have to call me, you have to give me your time, you have to be consistent with me, you know, whatever. Which that didn't go over well, because when you're like in middle school and high school, nobody's thinking about that. So what?
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You didn't.
No, it's just, as I was listening to that, it definitely, I could hear that key element that we're talking about tonight is just like having those standards. So I think even as a young girl, I hear that already kind of like built into you. So whether people were rising to that occasion, I hear that you already had that for yourself.
But you know what? In addition to my upbringing, I was very observant.
Okay.
And you know what? I was able to like look at my peers, like, okay, it's that freshman, you know, situation, like where the freshman girls, the older dudes trying to get at them. So I was already kind of like, let me not be that girl.
Right.
Like, and so I even set a standard for myself. Like, I'm not gonna talk to anybody that's 2 years older than me, because I don't want it to be a dynamic where they're a senior and I'm a freshman and they trying to finesse me.
Right.
So I've always kind of like seen. I haven't always like had the wisdom and the skill set to navigate, you know, dealing with boys and dating and whatnot. That's what I've had to learn how to do over time. But I had that foundation of just peeping and seeing, like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go that route. And I grew up in church. I can't say I was like tapped in. I was like physically there, but I didn't actually have a relationship with God. So I think that even played a role where you're hearing like, you know, preserve yourself until marriage, remain pure, you know, things like that. So I feel like I had a superficial desire to be a wife because it's like, that's what you're taught in church. I didn't really understand the whys, and I didn't understand how important it was to honor God's wishes in that way. But like I said, it did play a role in like the expectations I had of any potential suitors, anybody who liked me. I was very much like low-key traditional at a young age. Yeah. So I know when you met me though, I wasn't given that vibe. And I know you always say like, oh no, like, you know, you were just in the environment. But I really, after high school, I was not on my best behavior. Like, I really was turned up and drinking and partying. And I was always very prude and, you know, stuck up and girly in high school. And then I got to college and was just, if y'all know, y'all know. So how did you get to a point where you were willing to like look past how I was moving and get to know me, because you're saying you had standards. You never wanted to mess with the wrong type of girl. And for me, I felt like I was moving like that type of girl. So how did you get to a point where you was like, it's something different about her, even though I was very much behaving like everybody else in that environment?
I think for me, I think when you're kind of young, you have this idea. Like, I think there's a lot of childish things that I feel like you want to stand on, or ideas that you have of your partner, or what you expect from them, or who they're going to be. But I think when I met you and I actually got the chance to speak with you and get to know you and like really pick your brain, I think it gave me a chance to really know the real you. And I think, you know, I don't want to say that for the field that the real them is what's being presented out here, but I think, like, I mean, we come from an era, like, I'm not much of a texter or anything like that. So we came from an era where I would really be on the phone with you. Like, we would really spend hours.
That's true. We got to know each other.
Yeah, we really got to know each other. So I think in doing so, I was able to really see your heart a little bit more. And I think when I saw that, a lot of the other stuff that you think you want to stand on as a guy, because like you said, I get it. We both out kicking. We both on the scene. And I think during that era, my guy friends, and when we out on the scene and we out at the club and we drunk and this and that, we looking at the girls a certain kind of way. But I think when I got to see that inner you, it really just kind of resonated, and it really just read as real and authentic and caring and, you know,
but what drew you in though? It felt like, I said, to me, and we talk about this so often, y'all, and I'll be like, why did you even give me a chance? Like, I was not moving in a way that I was proud of. Like, I really felt like I was moving real trashy. Like, and that's just my opinion. Like, because like I said, it was like a complete 180 for me.
I mean, for me, if we're gonna be real, people was entertaining anybody. So I mean, I don't want to say that for you. Like, for me, when it came to you, I thought you was looking good. I liked your swag. You had the short hair, which is something like I had never messed with nobody that had all the hair off, and that was very like kind of early in them stages, or like in society. Like, that wasn't just the norm that girls was rocking like short hair and the dye colors and the different things like that. So I think you had a very outgoing look, so that kind of naturally made me gravitate towards you. And then I think if you like one of those people, like, I feel like if you can get through the hard exterior shell, you like a piece of candy, like with the hard exterior shell, but it's like gummy on the inside type of vibe. So I feel like, you know, if you could kind of get past that, I think it's cool. So I think for me, we were in a time where you would entertain anybody. You be at the club, you drunk, I'm talking to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying anything to anybody. But I think, like I said, it helped that you were already good looking. I like everything I saw about you. I just think, like you're saying, the idea of like, oh, I'm gonna wife her, or, you know, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I get where you're saying that didn't match the look, but I think for me, once I got to know you, I realized your outside skin didn't match your inside.
And it's so, you know, it's so crazy, y'all. He told me that. I feel like he said, we didn't text very often. So, well, you know what? I'm gonna backtrack. So when we I don't recall like when or how we met specifically, but I remember like we would be in communication, but it was always friendly. It was never like, I'm feeling you, you're feeling me, we talking. It was like I didn't know he was interested in me, because at that time I had a lot of attention on me. So like, he wasn't the only one on my phone. So he wasn't being like forward, like, I'm interested in you and I want to get to know you, I want to spend time with you. So allegedly we would make plans and I would flake unintentionally, but this is also allegedly, like I said. So we'd make these alleged plans, I would flake, and we ran into each other out in public, and I spoke and he like shooed me away or something weird. And I'm like, that's so weird. We're all having a good time. Like, what's his deal? Like, what's his problem? And I ended up being intrigued by the fact that he was like disengaging with me. So I was like, that's really weird. So I reached out to him, and he ended up telling me like he felt disrespected by my flaking on him. And after that, we like started to talk. And as he mentioned with me, like, he set a standard for me, or maybe reignited my desire to like assert myself and stand on my standards, because I went from having really rigid standards to like getting like a little discouraged when you constantly hearing like, ain't nobody about to do that, ain't nobody taking that seriously, ain't nobody getting married, ain't nobody, you know, whatever. To where I was like, okay, what's the point of having standards if nobody respects them? So when he and I met and he set the standard with me, like, hey, if you make plans with me, I expect you to honor them. And then after that, he would call me every single day. Like, we talked every day on the phone, but it wasn't even like you would sweat at me. Like, we would genuinely just talk and have conversations and get to know one another. So it kind of set a standard for me, like, okay, this is what it looks like for somebody to be serious about you. They make time for you. They're not texting you and playing on your phone. We're having real conversations. And he was consistent where we talked, let's say, every single day for like 3 months straight. He would call me every single day and gave me his time and attention. So it kind of set a precedent for me, like, okay, like I said, this is what it looks like to be pursued, and this is what it looks like for somebody to take you seriously. And I really appreciated that we were having a conversation one day and you were like, yeah, I feel like the way you present yourself is not really who you are. You have so much more to offer than like what you show the world. And it meant a lot to me to be seen, especially, like I said, after being discouraged for so long, that what I had to offer or the values that I held so dear, like, wasn't important to nobody else.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I felt like you kind of were blending in with the crowd, and I'm like, you a standout for real. So I'm just like, it just didn't read, but I also wasn't mad at that. Like, I wasn't knocking you for that, because I was like, we was all like, if we gonna be real, you know, I had a facade on. I had my own struggles that I was dealing with, my own ways that I was kind of trying to conform to what you're kind of told you should do, or what the masses are doing, and different things like that. So for me, I wasn't one just out here looking for a relationship, but I also wasn't foolish to know, like, you know, where I was going to drop the ball when I felt like something kind of came in that I don't think is really out there, or that I hadn't really seen out there. I mean, I had plenty of interactions with women. It was just like always surface, or just always, once you even get to know them, it's like, oh, like I was like that, y'all. Like I talked to women in a heartbeat, but it was just like I could find like that one little thing I was kind of like cool on, or, and I always people's time. Like, I'm be for real. Like, I'll be talking to you, and not even for like no extended period of time, but it's like we'd be talking. I wouldn't really, it's not really getting physical. It's not really no situation like that. And I entertain you, or we'd go link and everything like that. But I would, I guess, in theory, be kind of like trying to give it time so I could kind of see, like, should I continue with this? Is this person somebody I could build with, or am I on some trash and I need to get up out of there?
But you did have a vetting process. Like, whether it was developed or not, it does seem like you unintentionally had pause when getting to know somebody. Because like I said, with me, he didn't just, oh, she looked good, let me tell her I want to get to know her and I'm interested in her. We spent time like talking as friends. We spent time talking very casually, I guess, where he was able to check my temperature to be like, okay, she's somebody that I want to get to know more.
Yeah.
And I feel like that could be a lesson to anybody who's in the dating pool. Like, you don't have to go off of just looks. You don't have to go off of just career or just whatever. Like, you can see somebody and of course be attracted to them, but take the time and get to know them.
Yeah,
like, have a conversation, have several conversations with somebody to see if you like who they are as a person versus just how they present themselves.
Yeah, I would say just off of first interactions or off of straight looks, like, I would have dropped the ball. Like, I know for a fact I would have dropped the ball if that was really all I was going for, if I didn't give, like you said, pause to a lot of situations and kind of like let it marinate a little bit before it's like, before I'm dealing with you, before we trying to be physical, before I'm trying to cash out or do the most, or before I'm trying to slap titles on stuff. I think a lot of, or from what I saw and in my experience, I feel like when you spent too much time, like, or not too much time, but when you tried to move too fast, I've seen a lot of people kind of drop the ball, or a lot of people kind of end up in bad situations or dead situations. And it was like, hey, you could have avoided all of this. So I think that was a big fear of mine. And I think, I think I was still wanting to have interactions with people or with women and different things like that. But it was also at the same time, it's like, I'm not trying to get caught up in no situation like I said earlier in the video, like coming from a scenario where it's like I'm not finna go home to my parents and tell them I got a baby mom and or I'm co-parenting with somebody or not. And no disrespect to anybody, but for me, like you said, that standard was kind of in my mind, and I needed to find somebody that was gonna align with that. And I'm not saying I was actively out here looking for that, or that I was trying to wife up every girl or anything like that. It was actually quite the opposite, like where it's like, I gotta vet you, I gotta see what's up, and if you don't make it, you don't make it.
Yeah.
And I might have to fall back from you at that point. But it's just, I don't know, I see a lot of guys kind of make that mistake, and then I feel like we on the back end got all this drama, we got all these gripes and all this other issues, when it's a lot of due diligence I feel like you could take care of on the front end if you kind of slow down, and we kind of get back to a space where, like, I didn't mind that. And like I said, I get it. I'm not like everybody. I'm not into the texting. I'm not into, and social media wasn't as big as it is now, so I can't imagine how it is trying to navigate, like, when you DMing people and everything like that. But even in this season, like, I tell guys all the time, like, I feel like I could still successfully navigate finding, like, that needle in the haystack, because I'm not going to subject myself to nonsense. I'm not going to entertain people like I think we was just talking about it the other day, about people DMing people, and it's like, these are people that have spouses or in relationships and stuff like that, and they're receiving DMs, and it like kind of makes me wonder, like, and I know some guys are gonna just shoot their shot, but also it like they're hitting people up with like questions as if they haven't even done their basic research. It's like, if this person has a social media profile, there's a lot of information you could gather,
just basic recon,
basic research you could do on somebody right from there. And I think for me, I feel like even if I look at a woman's profile, seeing what she posts, seeing her comments, seeing her friend groups, different things like that, is going to give me a lot of insight on whether or not I even need to entertain a woman, or even need to make that first reach out or first message out to somebody. But I mean, I don't know, that's just me. I mean,
what?
I don't know. I mean,
you do know.
I mean, that's really it. I mean, I just feel like, I have the luxury of not having to be in that space currently, and with what's going on. But I really feel like we're doing ourselves a disservice as men by not truly vetting women, or we're dealing with women and we don't got no business dealing with. And I've kind of coined a term, and it might be something else, somebody might have already said it, but for me, I feel like something I've always kind of said is, I feel like a lot of people are dealing with seat and space fillers, because they don't want to sit in that space of being lonely or being uncomfortable or not being on the scene or not being lit. And it can be boring, your phone can be dry at times, but I feel like I see the people who's popping and the people that's out here, and then I kind of see the results that they're garnering, or I kind of see who they end up tied to, emotionally or by way of child. And I'm kind of like, yo, you didn't have to be here, or you could have avoided this, or had you took a little extra time. And that goes for both men and women, in my opinion. Like, I think if we kind of really slow down this process, I think we're in this like microwave era, where everything is just moving so fast. It's instant gratification. It's, and even that's something I was just thinking about when we was talking about how we talked on the phone. Like, I feel like this is also that era where it's like, a guy wanting to talk on the phone is probably deemed as weird, or somebody wanting to reach out to you every day is like thirsty, or different things like that. And it's like, really, I'm just showing intention. Really, I'm just showing priority. And different things like that. And I get it. Like, I'm not saying some guys don't be weird or whatever, but when you got a creepy dude versus a dude that's genuinely interested and he like, hey, I'm really actively trying to get to know you and
Yeah, I
take
want
you
to see about
seriously.
you.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So I mean, how do you feel like, or kind of taking it back, I guess, what do you feel like was the typical approach or whatnot that you were getting during that time?
Like you said, you at the club, somebody think you look good, and they text you, and I was very strict in the text messages. I ain't gonna lie. So, and I would suggest you ladies do this too. Like you know, you meet somebody, if they text you something like off the rip, like weird and inappropriate, check it, or as y'all say, clock it. So like let's say for example, you meet somebody new and y'all texting and he say something like fresh or super inappropriate, like, oh, is you a freak? And mind you, this is 2010, y'all, so maybe y'all not saying that no more, but it's like, I'm cool on you. Because if that, like, to me, when somebody first reaches out to you, they should be putting their best foot forward. And if that's how you come in at me and your first text message to me, I already see what you about.
Yeah.
And you can't redeem yourself. That's how you came at me. I'm cool. I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
But I think what's so difficult is we'll have really shallow standards and they only apply to people that we don't like. You have to maintain your standards no matter who the person is. So if you want somebody to take you seriously and respect you and honor you and eventually marry you, you can't switch up when you meet the fine girl or the girl with the bomb body, or you can't switch up when you meet the dude with money or that got the lifestyle that you hope to have. You have to remain firm in your standards. So back to your question is, I feel like it was people who were too enamored with me, which I it's like a slippery slope, like as a woman, where you like, you don't want to do like sweating you like you do, but you don't.
Yeah.
And it's like, you got to have some respect for yourself as a man, and you should never just be putting me on a pedestal where you willing to do and say, and like you coming off like too pressed, and that's not a good look. It's like I said, dudes either be too enamored, or they don't have time for you at all, or they're inappropriate, or, you know, inconsistent. Like I said, this has been 14 years now, like, so I don't remember all like that. But I will say is that, what I will say is that you did set yourself apart and taking the time over several months to get to know me and just, you know, be a friend to me. And then transitioning into like, hey, I'm interested in getting to know you on another level, and then being consistent throughout that process, and then moving into a relationship with me. And that's something I want to talk about too in terms of like standards, is sometimes when you're in a relationship and you feel it is taking like, or heading to like that next phase, like, you know, you're ready to take that next step and to be committed with one another, like, be honest about how you feel. Because I feel like so many times, like you know how on TV shows it'd be like you rocking with a dude or a woman, and then they ex come into town and it's like, oh, my ex wants to meet up, and you know, whatever, and it's like, you clearly upset, you clearly don't want me meeting up with my ex, but you tell me like, oh, it's cool, but you really sick about it. And I understand that's like a TV example, but that happens in real life where the relationship is like on the cusp of exclusivity, and a situation arises and nobody's being upfront about like, hey, I really want to be exclusive with you. So instead of just saying, I want to be exclusive with you, you present a situation that you know they're not going to be cool with, just to take their temperature.
Do people even do that anymore though?
Or maybe they don't. Like I said, I'm back in,
y'all
I'm back in
2010.
2010.
Know, like, y'all gotta let us know. Like,
I'm back in 2010.
Like, how do y'all transition into relationships nowadays? Is it an actual conversation? Is it just kind of like go with the flow? Is it like, how does that work at this day and age? Like, and I can't even say we were doing it back then, but I think it was definitely, like you said, a time where it was kind of like, hey, I'm rocking with you, you know.
You asked me for exclusivity.
Yeah, it's like, you know, I'm cool. Like, I'm not finna do nothing out here. I'm like, I'm cool on these other females, everything like that. So I'm just curious, like, as you was kind of saying, that just made me kind of think like,
that is something to consider though. How do you all transition? But I also know we wanted to like talk about when you don't have standards and you find yourself in a relationship with someone who doesn't meet your expectations. Why do you think people do that?
like I guess to kind of segue or kind of bring it back to my point that I mentioned earlier is like that term like seat filler and space fillers. I think a lot of times people are bored, they're lonely, and as opposed to having to sit in that space, because really to me that's more a space for you to develop and really vet people and really weed out nonsense in your life. But instead of doing that, I think a lot of times we get, like I said, just caught up where I'm lonely, or your friends keep tugging at you like, hey, let's go out, let's do XYZ, and you know, you catch that right person at the right time, and it's like, oh yeah, cool, and everybody's cool. When I was drunk and I was on the scene or I was kicking it, everybody was cool, everybody was nice, everybody was like, anybody could get my number, you know, during that season. But I think having that ability to navigate a room, have a conversation with somebody and still be cool, or be, you know, obviously in a nice way, and apology, you know, without being too harsh on someone. Like, you ain't gotta talk to everybody, you ain't gotta get every number. You could see a bad female or a beautiful woman or whatever and be like, hey, I can tell this ain't the vibe, you know, and I don't need to be in my flesh right now trying to chase this woman that I know me and her not going online, or that I'm not going to look at her seriously or whatnot. So I think, like, for me, I just was cool on that, like, because I think that's how you end up subjecting yourself. That's how you end up getting caught up, either getting a baby mom or getting in a toxic situation with somebody, and y'all doing a bunch of back and forth and everything like that, instead of really just kind of sitting. And I get it, I'm not saying like sit for years on end with nobody, but I think if you really take that time and do the work and have some real discernment, you'll kind of, don't nobody want to be lonely. I feel like you'll navigate, you'll try to find a way to get to a partner or somebody you can, that male or female energy you looking for. Like, you gonna find it, but I think if
you gotta be legit yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's the problem, is a lot of people out here ain't about nothing. And something I've been noticing is this trend, and I'm going to speak from a woman's perspective, obviously, since I'm a woman. I see this trend where men are dating like beneath them and then like stunting on the woman. And I'm onto y'all, because to me, if you are the man that you think you are, why don't you have the woman that you believe you deserve? So ladies, be mindful of the man who's with you, but who expresses his disinterest in the relationship and his dislike for you. I feel like that is a great way for a man to get his ego stroked, by having a woman who is vying for his love and attention, and he knows he's not that interested in her. And I also feel like it creates a space for men to be mediocre. If I have a woman who I can critique, if I have a woman who I believe is beneath me, or if I have a woman who I'm trying to say stuff like, oh, you have to prove that you deserve to be a wife, show me what makes you special. If you're with me, you should know what makes me special. If you're with me, you should know what makes me valuable. I don't have to prove myself to you, because if I have to prove myself to you, that means that you don't have a vetting process. And you're looking for me to do all this work to meet your expectations, instead of being the type of man who only interacts with women who meets his expectations. So that's something I wanted to share, because like I said, I'm onto y'all. I see y'all, and I don't like that. I don't like that at all. So please change that, guys. And ladies, you got to work on yourselves too. You have to love yourselves enough to say that I don't have to settle or accept a man who degrades and disrespects me as if I'm the only one that has work to do in a relationship. If you know you have work to do, if you know you have things that you should change as a woman, change them because you know you need to change them, not because you're trying to make yourself worthy to a man who already doesn't see value in marriage and probably doesn't see value in himself either. So that's something I wanted to share. And I think it's important, because I hear so many people like talk about relationships as if it only impacts them. Like when the standards that I have for me are not just for me, it's for anybody who looks at me. And I'm not even saying people have to put me on a pedestal, but we in a community, like, you know, we're a part, we're people, we see each other, we're influenced by one another. So anybody who looks at me, or even my girls, I got 3 girls, I have to have standards because I want to set the tone, because they're going to be looking at me for what they should accept, the type of men that they should allow, or even the way they carry themselves as young ladies. I have to make sure I'm carrying myself a certain way. I have to make sure that I'm speaking in a certain way. I have to make sure I'm holding myself to a high standard so that my daughters can turn into well-adjusted young ladies and eventually women. So when you think about having standards, like I said, it doesn't just benefit you, it benefits our children, and it benefits anybody who looks to you for representation. And you don't have to even be positive representation for people to look at you as representation. You have to just be a part of the community. So I'm challenging you all to develop standards that will change the trajectory of everybody's relationship. You might be comfortable with the bare minimum. You might be comfortable with, you know, long-term situationships, but is that what's best for us as a whole?
Yeah, I agree. And to piggyback off of that, like you said, you know, my challenge to the fellas is just kind of like same thing, like thinking about, like you said, the fact I have 3 daughters. So for me, it's like I want them to know what it's like for a man to take a woman serious, to a man to want to aspire to make them his wife and to want to provide for them. And like you said, having that example as a mother to them and as a woman to them, being that first example of like, this is how you should carry yourself, this is how you have grace, this is how you maintain class, this is how you deal with, you know, knuckleheads, or you know, different things like that. Like, I'm not trying to subject my daughters to nonsense dudes, you know what I mean? And I think in that self, I have a son, and then also, like you said, being an example to the masses. Like I said, I don't think anybody's truly just looking at me, but each day where I have an interaction with a young man, or with my son or other men, my homeboys, whatever, I know by default I'm an example as far as a married man and a husband and a father, and I trying my best each and every day. I don't mean I'm perfect, but trying my best each and every day to be that example and be that representation to shift the culture, shift the narratives, and different things like that. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about who we are as men and what true manhood looks like, and how important we are to the household, and how important families are to the diaspora. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think we're missing the mark, and I think because we've kind of missed it for so long, I think we're starting to get desensitized to its importance or its value, or starting to feel like, well, because this is seemingly the norm, I need to figure out how to maneuver in this. I don't want to be offensive, but like kind of state of mediocrity and different things like that. Like, I feel like we can push forward, we can find success in relationships, but I think, you know, it starts at the dating phase. It starts with being healed, you know, ourselves as individuals, and then healing as a couple. It starts with dedication within the relationship, and loyalty and respect. There's a lot of different factors, a lot of different things to cover, and I just think, like you said, it's just so important. And like you said, we're doing our own work, and we've been doing our own work as a couple over the years. We're trying to do work for our kids, and for anybody else that sees us. You know, we're at a point where it's kind of disheartening, but I was like, I look around at my peers, and a lot of people aren't lasting, a lot of people aren't making it, and I think it's kind of putting a stain on different things. And, you know, while we're not perfect, I'm just so happy at where we're at, and the tenure we have in, and the dedication and respect that we have for one another. For sure.
And like I'll close out, like, essentially, like piggybacking what you just said, as far as like, if you're in a relationship right now, you don't have to stay stagnant. You can decide to take that next step. and do the right thing. And even if you're with a woman who's like, oh, it's not a big deal, like we don't have to get married, to me, like if I'm being all the way real, that's a mindset that we have, like you said, because we've learned how to maneuver in the state of mediocrity. So even if you have a woman who is comfortable with complacency, you can advocate for the importance of commitment and marriage in the relationship. You can say, this is important for me to take this step and to honor you in this way, and to show our children or the children that we plan to have one day that this is what a man does. This is how a family operates. So I hope you all found this informative and a little fun, and we will be back at some point, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, good night.